Excellent. Hello and good evening. Welcome back to the JRC. This is our first event of the current term. It's a really difficult term. As you all can see, people have been diminished by all kinds of afflictions. Flu is going around, COVID has come back. I've had both over the last month, and it's, yes, you were out for a whole month.
Yes.
So you have to be very careful. So sit closely separated. That's quite good.
Don't breathe at each other.
Yes.
Or don't breathe at all.
Just
for now.
Back, yes. This feels a bit familiar, you know, from 2 years ago. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for tonight, Dr. Artour Mitski, who has been working on this particular topic, the Thai state and its Japanese migrants, for I think over 10 years. You've done part of your MA thesis on that. Yes. You have really had also a very long stint in Thailand yourself. Yes. And he's finished his PhD in 2022 on the same topic and is now working on a book version of that.
Routledge, apparently, right? Yes.
Yes, that's that's very good news. Hello, do come in. Join us, no problem. He's also he's an research associate at the JRC here at SOAS, and he's running a blog called Ex-Oriente Lux, which is about all things Japanese. So if you're interested in that, I think that's I read it every 2 weeks with great pleasure.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So this was my second supervisor and my first supervisor right here, Rachel. So the main culprits, so to say, of my let's put it that way, success. So yes, the topic today is Thai state in the Japanese migrants, and we'll be looking at how at the to put it sort of in the PhD way, the consideration of the relationship between the Thai nation state and its transnational migrants. And this is the plan of my talk. I will introduce my research myself. Well, Fabio did quite a bit of it, but there were sort of a few more gaps to fill in, so you would know why I'm doing this or what I'm trying to achieve there. And then I will tell you who are Thailand's Japanese, who are, despite their very large numbers and their almost 400-year history, are barely known outside this very little area of sort of academic interest. And then I will proceed with a quick historical perspective of how Siam and Thailand has managed its migration historically. And then we will look at what's different now. What's the point of looking at it now? It's always like, you know, this receive migrants, assimilate them, etc. But what's different now? What makes current situation very different from any previous historical era? And so I will zero in on that, and we will look at contemporary migrants versus receiving country, what's different now, and how the Thai state approaches migration control. And we will finish with we will finish with the outcomes for both parties. So what that signifies for all involved parties. So, short introduction, myself, right? So this is myself, right? In my natural habitat, in my uniform, this multiple times. Anyway, so I teach Japanese language and also academic skills. You may not be aware, my students may not be aware. I've been teaching academic skills since 2012, actually, right? So I don't want to do migration on Japanese, right? And I studied in Japan, Osaka Daigai. It doesn't exist anymore. It's part of Handai now. Osaka Daigai. It was back in the 90s. I got my MA and PhD in SOAS and all the accoutrements of Japanese proficiency and so on and so forth. Fabio mentioned my blog, Substack. It's a leading article about also in Japanese, where I try to sort of put transfer of scientific knowledge into more popular form. So if you want to subscribe, it's free. I've been involved with Japanese community since actually 1995. I'm no spring chicken and go back that far. Right? I arrived there first. I got my first job after university was with the B2B business-to-business advertising agency in Thailand. I had lots of Japanese customers. So before my academic pursuits, I was a very corporate type. And I got there through my Japanese connections, through my Japanese university connections, and that's how I have been involved 3 decades now in the community. So it goes back quite a while. And I did ethnographic research for my PhD thesis on transnational migrant belonging. Immigrants. When you live in between 2 countries, where do you belong? How do you form the belonging themselves? So I did the regular anthropological thing, implementation of sort of jazz art with semi-structured interviews, media analysis, legislation analysis, so on and so forth. So this is how I obtain my data. So everything I'm going to say, I will refer to it every time, but most stuff that I will talk about derives from my PhD research, in which, as Fabio mentioned, I spent quite a bit of time. Right? Okay, so today's objective, also apart from introducing my research to you, I will be very grateful for your feedback. So whatever thoughts, what I'm going to say provokes, or any comments, any concerns, please share them with me. I will be very grateful. I'm a people I can take constructive criticism. So don't spare me. I'm also very interested in what people think, because this, what I'm going to present, this is a plan for my forthcoming article. I promise to Rachel, just being angelically patient with me, but it's coming. It's very much in the pipeline. Right. So let's start. So what's special about my research? Apart from very few people do research on this, only almost unsafe. I've never met her. We've been in email correspondence. Fabio knows, like almost unsafe. Right? Yeah. So she's the only person who does research on Thailand and Japanese. And what I find interesting about my particular research object is that, first of all, on how I approach it, first of all, there's quite a bit of research out there, especially anthropological, which takes the migrant side of the migrant's perspective without taking into account the receiving party. Right? So a lot of time it becomes a little bit more misinformed in terms of how we look at migrants and to help us focus the kinds of state, but I think it's more complex than that, so I'm trying to demonstrate that. And another thing is very often, because global migration is seen through the global south versus global north perspective, so there's a lot of that dynamic. It's very often race-based, racialized, right? So it can be very hard to sort of see what's going on there, because it's very hard to take to weight all the factors and see how it works. So in this case, in this particular case, because we're talking about Japanese migrants in Thailand, so the control variable is very right? It's not present, right? And it's still, interestingly enough, also it's still global north versus global south, but it's reversed and upside down, because the Japanese people who are we may not always think of them that way, they are global north, right? They arrive to global south. So it's the tables are completely turned in this case. Right, and another thing is overall Thailand's migration management, it may have its sort of weak points and so on and so forth, but still it's rather successful. It's quite a success case. So we can benefit from looking at their best practices and learning about. Sorry, I've also my comment. I need to drink. I'm sorry. I did drink. Okay, so that's the plan of my lecture, right? Okay, so Thailand's the Japanese migrants. So this is Ms. Morimoto, she is a Japanese national Japanese student at Bangkok's Kasetsart University. And in 2019, she made quite a new splash in Bangkok, in Thailand overall, with her 5-year campaign against motorcycles riding on pavement in Bangkok. As Rachel was smiling, it's a huge problem in Thailand because they don't observe traffic regulations. They are, a lot of times, they are run by mafia, they are on amphetamines, and they believe, because they have these magic tattoos on their necks, they believe that they can break any traffic rules and God will yank them out of any trouble by the tattoo. I'm not making. Rachel will confirm as the actual thing, right? So, and this Japanese lady alone stood up to these motorcycle taxi drivers, actually taxi drivers in Bangkok, who are very, they're not angels, right? They can be quite violent. And she would stand on the pavement and block their way and ask them to drive on the road. Over the course of her 5-year campaign, she was assaulted 4 times. But she is trained in Aikido, right? So she would fight back. And in an interview to Bangkok Post, she was reported as saying, even when I tell them about traffic regulation, traffic rules, they don't seem to know about them at all. Right? Yes. It's a common thing, right? Anyway, so why I chose this? Because this is in many ways, more ways than one, an allegory of the relationship between the Thai state and Japanese residents in Thailand, right? So, so how does the relationship work? I will explain. Right. First of all, who are Thailand's Japanese? Well, first of all, they go back quite a while. The community has existed in some shape or form since the 17th century. Actually, since like the late 16th century. Right, so it goes back quite a while. Thailand, over all these centuries, have been considered an unkingdom. I'm not sure if everybody understands Japanese. It means cheap, close, and warm destination for Japan. It's it has been over centuries. It was a destination for escape and dekasegi. Dekasegi means like working outside your where you live, right? Going make money elsewhere, right? So, the historically, migrants would be professional mercenaries, or samurais who didn't have a job in pacifying Japan, so they would go and offer their skills across Southeast Asia. Then we would have Christian refugees, probably aware of that, right? They had to escape somewhere from persecution. Various traders and karaoke sex workers. And presently, like so in the modern period, which I mean post-war period, most Japanese people, first of all, they were mostly corporate expats on temporary assignments. And then sotokomori, these are drifters who escape. It's the counterpart. I'm not sure if you're aware, hikikomori is social recruiters, and the counterpart is sotokomori, people who escape outside Japan from the Soviet pressure. Right? Actually, almost themselves did the research on that. And rinjiatoi, local hires, people who escape the harsh realities of the grown-up working adult in Japan. They move abroad and they trade their higher income for more freedom working abroad. And retirees. Thailand is a very popular destination for Japanese pensioners because you get more bang out of the yen by living in Thailand. Bang for your buck, right? Bang for your yen, right? Right. So another interesting important factor is the unequal historical unequal treaties. They have been same treaties have been periodically reviewed, updated form since 1878, and they give a very privileged, lots of various legal privileges to Japanese citizens in Thailand. For example, you can like the period of your stay, and you can just open a company, you don't have to post profit, and so on and so forth. You can just go and and maybe can just go and stay in Thailand. Right, and it's not really reciprocated, as you can imagine. What is also interesting, there have been very, very rapid growth since the late 1980s. And if we look at the data for 1950s, there were like barely a couple of hundred Japanese residents in Bangkok. Now we have over 100,000. Quite substantially, 120,000 across the world. So that was, excuse me, I need some water. You hear me well, by the way? Yeah. Okay, this map of Japanese Bangkok. It's central Bangkok, because Bangkok is like, it's never ending, you know, sprawling. It's an oriental setting where the city doesn't know where the city is getting. If you remember the line from the musical, maybe not. Anyway, so communities spread follows the expansion of the Japanese built rail network. So all this new development, that's also in the last 30 years. Monorail and metro, they're built by the Japanese, with the Japanese money. And it's not rather centrally now, it's reaching neighborhoods. Japanese migrants tend to live next to stations, just like that. Obviously for commuting purposes, right? For commuting convenience. Do I have any? Okay, okay, I have, okay, there we go. It's somewhere, Ceylon and Satong, that's where they work. And also, just like in Japan, you know, by day, it's an office area, and by night, it's night entertainment. From golf shops to karaoke bars to all kind of shady massage parlors and so on and so forth, just like in Japan, right? Very similar setup. And then they have there's a railway link to this area, Hong Kong, right? This is where Little Tokyo, from here to here, from Hong Kong to Tonglong. So what they do, they work here and then take the SkyTrain and go back home by train, just like in Japan. And the whole station, the Hong Kong station, the same setup as any major, or like basically any railway station in Japan. It's a huge retail center, right? Very, very similar. So that's what I also realized by living there. So that setup is exactly transplanted from Japan into Thailand. And it costs lots of money, of course, you understand, right? So Sukhumvit and Bang Na is in very corner all the way there. That's where the industrial area is. That's where most expats live in Sukhumvit and Bang Na. And then Pratunam is where Sotokomori, the drifters and budget-conscious retirees live. You can see somewhere in the sort of in the center there, Pratunam, right? Adi is where media types and hipsters live. All the trendy cafes are there. And Ramkhamhaeng is where students live, Japanese students who study at Thailand's biggest university. Oops. Right. We'll look closely at, I broke down the situation into 3 levels. Micro level, which is individual. Then we have medio, meso level, which is institutional. Macro level is like sort of bigger structures and phenomena. What else is we can say about Japanese contemporary, current, right? Migrants, Japanese migrants in Bangkok, they're over 100,000 and they're constantly growing. There are more and more people escaping Japan's 3 lost decades. Probably they're obviously sort of hopefully over with, we don't know yet, right? Most of them are concentrated in Bangkok. I would say 90% of them live in Bangkok. Despite their numbers, they have very loose communal links. They don't unite around religion. They're too financially independent to cluster together. So they don't need support from each other, just go there and live, right? Different types, as you see, corporate expats, then small-time entrepreneurs who open their companies. A lot of people open their companies for the sake of visa because you don't have to post profit. You just open the company and run it without profit and you can stay in Thailand almost indefinitely. If you have a Japanese passport or American, right? Then you have naturalized, non-naturalized foreign wives, kokusai kekkon. people, right? Rongusteya, retirees who stay there over a long period of time. Local hires, like I say, students, sotokomori drifters. In Bangkok, Japanese migrants are at the top of the social ladder. They are considered to be the same sort of, they enjoy the same status as Farang, which are Westerners. Yipun, by the way, is the Thai name for Japanese, Yipun. Right. Most of them make no attempt at assimilation, right? And there's a quote from one of my ethnographic respondents. She says, I cook Thai once a month without chilies, and that's about all I sort of do for Thai culture. Fair enough, right? Because Thai food is very powerful. I remember it took me some time to get used to. Generally, Japanese migrants are not very fluent in Thai because, first of all, you can get by in Thailand, in Bangkok, definitely speaking English. It's very, very, it's like lingua franca. It's a very, very cosmopolitan city. And Thai is also extremely difficult to study for Japanese people. I'll just give you an example. In Japanese, you have 5 vowels. In Thai, you have 32 plus 5 tones. So 32 multiplied by 5, right? So it's a very difficult language to learn for Japanese people. Phonetics are just mad. It took me 2 years before people stopped laughing at me. Also, it's a very affluent community backed by Japan's economic clout, and Japan had been Thailand's biggest investor until 2014, when predictably China took over. Now China is the biggest investor. And well, because of that, there's an asymmetrical power relation between Thailand and Japan. I mentioned the unequal treaties. So Japanese people enjoy very sort of extended legal rights, visa concessions in Thailand, and Thai people not the same way in Japan. And what is also interesting about the Japanese community in Bangkok, at the individual level, they don't really hang out together. Like there's not such a, they don't really sort of act as a one community. At the same time, they have very strong institutions and long established institutions. For example, Nihon Jinkai is the Japanese Association of Thailand, was established in 1904 and had been, and it still has been, right? It still is extremely active in Bangkok. A lot of events are organized by them and so on. Sorry, I have to speak into this. Right, and there's a huge Japanese geared comfort infrastructure. A respondent of mine from my field work said that central Bangkok is more convenient than Tokyo. In many ways, it's true. It's a very extremely nice place to live if you have money to be there. Wide availability of Japanese foodstuffs and, like I mentioned, strong institutions. And so what it all results in, right? How does a state, how does the recipient country deal with a powerful foreign enclave like that? Because as you can see, they're very sort of, it's a quite prominent presence of very many people who are not assimilating and who are backed by the financial clout of their home country. So what do you do with them? Right. So quick sort of, I thought I would fill you in on sort of, not relation between Japan and Thailand, but their relative standing, right? It looks on the map that look very close, but actually the flight is Tokyo to Bangkok is 6 hours. It's approximately from London to Amman to Jordan, so it's quite far, right? And in many ways, both countries are very similar. Both are capitalist democracies and constitutional monarchies. Both are Buddhist, although Japan is, it's arguable to what extent Japan is Buddhist. Culturally very hierarchy conscious, very high context cultures, and with very strong cultural focus on manners and propriety. The similarities could have stopped there in a way, in the sense that Japan is high income versus Thailand middle income, but recently that gap has been closing both ways. So Japan is going down and Thailand is on its way up. And another interesting thing that uniquely in Asia, Thailand is very Shinnichi-shugi, very Japanophile, because they are maybe the only Asian country that doesn't have any bad memories from the Second World War, although they were occupied for 4 years. So Japan really issued money in Thailand, so it was a serious occupation of the Japan. But somehow it was, yes, it was a, I'm not mic trained yet. So generally Thai people are very predisposed towards Japanese people. Right. So like little graphics for you. So this is a commemorative stela in Ayutthaya, where a Japanese settlement, Nihonmachi, Nihonjin-machi, right, used to be in the 17th century until the Burmese came and razed it to the ground, burned it down, right, in one of the wars. So this was built rather recently, right, the stela. And these Japanese residents, the Japanese school children, at a big event in Bangkok. It's called Bonodori Ramwong Taikai. I won't go too deep into that because it will be like we don't have time for that, right? So anyway, it's a big event organized by Nippon Shinkai, by the way, right? So this is the Bangkok skyline. So Bangkok is not that little cute, laid back, tropical paradise as some people think of it. It's a very, very modern, brash and bold global metropolis. So it's not really that laid back, right? And this is the Bangkok metro built by the Japanese with Japanese money. So, okay, so let's look at okay. So the question was, right? So how do you deal with migrants who are very affluent and powerful and don't want to assimilate? How do you manage their presence? Because you cannot just leave them on your own if you want to run a successful nation state. Right. So let's look first of all, how has the Thai state dealt with its migrants historically? It's quite interesting because it's quite a journey. It started off from Thailand, Siam. It was the original name of Thailand. A long history of incorporating foreign populations, because historically Southeast Asia, for most history until the Second World War, was dramatically underpopulated. There was just not enough people, too much land. So in all military conquests in the area, warring armies would take over populations and move them over rather than take over land. So, and it lasted until the Second World War. That's how it worked. And how it worked in terms of incorporating foreign populations into Siam, or as it was known then. Rather than a nation state, it was a very loose feudal agglomeration of ethnic vassal states, known as the mandala state, right? It wasn't the country in the modern sense of the word at all. There were no borders. So a little anecdote for you. When the English delegation went to meet the Thai king after the First Anglo-Burmese War in 1821, they asked him, where does your realm end? Because we need to take over Burma from you. We don't want to take over your land. And the Thai king didn't know, because it wasn't the concept at all. There were no borders. It was sort of a series of less and less loyal vassal states until the influence would peter out, and then it was considered to be, well, not your territory anymore. So that kind of, so what we think of now as a state didn't exist at the time. And not only in Asia, it was it's quite a global phenomenon, that kind of control over your territory and borders, the way it's exercised now, is a rather new development. So what was going on? Various degrees of slow burn ethnic fusion. There's not awfully much research about it, because historically we cannot really attest to how it happened, because nobody bothered to research in the, say, in the 17th century how like, say, Lao captives were faring in the Siam, in the state of Siam, how they were integrating. There's no research about it, but we know sort of like there's circumstantial evidence to the fact that it was very slow burn ethnic fusion, which was changed when Siam decided to embark on modernization in the mid-19th century, and they started building up nation state by annexing adjacent kingdoms and becoming what we know as Thailand. And over the course of the late 19th century and like early 20th century, it resulted in organized Thaification. So people were made to become Thai, because even though they were not really Thai in the strict sense of the word, because there were multiple identities, multiple ethnicities, thanks to that pre-modern habit of capturing foreign populations and moving them over. And the hallmarks of that were requirements for that, right? There were Thai name, Thai passport, and Thai language. Without that, you wouldn't be allowed to reside in Thailand, to become naturalized, right? So you would be forced to change your name to a Thai name, and learn the language, and acquire the Thai citizenship, and relinquish your previous allegiances. So it was very, very strong assimilationism, right? And on the hint of multiculturalism, on the hint of it was allowed for Thai Muslims, because once again, they were annexed from two sultanates in the south of Thailand were annexed, so they were not really culturally that Thai in reality. And ethnically, a lot of them are Malay. Anyway, and lots of mountain tribes. So northern Thailand is populated by multiple peoples who are not Thai at all, right? They're not really, or they may be related, like Thai Kadai family. They have like sort of distant cousins, right? Anyway, so the outcomes of that were, first of all, Thailand has a huge Chinese people, so there's a population of Chinese persuasion, right? People who originally were from China, but they're considered to be one of the most integrated Chinese residents in the whole Asia, right? Because they were kind of forced to integrate, right? And Thai state is like well unified, so there is very relatively low level of ethnic tension. There's some sort of like some hoo-ha going on with the fringes and so on and so forth, but it's rather effectively quelled. Becoming or being Thai is a prestige identity in Thailand, right? So so that was up to recently. Once again, it was modern or modernist approach, right? How this kind of a strong assimilationism worked until something happened. So what happened is a big thing, and it's not specific only to Thailand. It's a global thing, global change, migration overall. We may not be aware of it because we are kind of in the eye of the storm, right? We're living it, right? It's the air we breathe, right? But the big thing is that now we can live transnationally. And what does it mean, right? A very Marxist sort of way of looking at it, right? So new technology brings about new relations. And the new technology that allows us now to live if we want to, and we do, I think, actually, right? I practice what I preach, right? You can live in two countries, right? Or more, and it's enabled by instant communication technologies. So like I can be in conversation with my mom like for, as if she's here all the time. And cheap air travel, so you never worry about how you're gonna go back to your old country, because if you remember in the olden days, if you're sent to Australia, that's pretty much you're not coming back, right? And now you just hop on Qantas and you're here.
right? And then availability of affordable ethnic foodstuffs, so you can buy any food, and it's a big, big thing. Also in anthropology, it's a big thing how you sort of form belonging and how much your identity is revolved around your acquired taste for different foods, right? And its sheer availability, we take it for granted, right? Because thanks to globalization, you just go to Marks and Spencer's and buy like practically anything, right? Any kind of global fare, but it wasn't always like that. So another thing is sheer numbers, right, of migration these days. So proportionately, it's about the same, but because there are more of us than have ever been on this planet, ever at all, the sheer numbers of migrants allow them to cluster together and stay with their own kind, and there's no necessity. It's not for all migrants, but to quite a big proportion of migrants. You can live in a different country, but you never leave your own culture. You can just live as you have never left your country, right? And here lies the tension between what is known, these kind of lifestyles called transnational, that's the official term for that, transnational migration, right? Transnational, right? And the nation state, because the nation state is still there, and in a way it's antithetical to this kind of transnational lifestyle. So how is it resolved, right? And I will zero in on the specific example of how it's done by the Thai state and its Japanese migrants, but this thing is going on everywhere, right? How do we how does the nation state, to which we own quite a bit, once again, we don't realize that because we take it for granted, right? And how do the nation state and transnational migration coexist? So this is how it works, right? So there are two big things in Thailand, right? First of all, Thai state always looks for economic benefit. They can profit, they will do it, right? And it owes this stance owes its existence to what is, I think it's very interesting, I discovered it myself, I didn't realize that what we know as neoliberalism, and we normally think that Thatcher and Reagan started that. But actually, Thailand started that in the 1950s. Right? Their government was very concerned with the fact that despite 1 century of efforts, Thai modernization didn't really succeed, that they couldn't achieve what is known as modern economic growth, right? So economy just wouldn't grow, right, for 100 years. It was just sort of still kind of subsistence level of economy. People were having okay lives, but it wasn't becoming modern. It wasn't becoming modern in the sense that we think it should be, right? So there was no economic growth. So what they tried to do, they went the full 9 yards and liberalized Thai economy, and they have stayed with that. So no matter what government, what party takes over governance in Thailand, they've stayed on that course ever since. So it's 70 years of very, very staunch, hardcore neoliberalism, right? So, and then Reagan and Thatcher learned about it, and they said, okay, that's maybe that's not how it happened. Anyway, so what happens then? So at the legislation level, Thai migration legislation is very much attuned, right? So it allows the government to manage the floodgates. So when the economy is good, large numbers of illegal migrants, people who just they just flood into the country and provide cheap labor from neighboring countries mostly. Once again, they're very culturally close to Thailand, like Burma or Cambodia or Laos. They're allowed to come, and when the economy is bad, they start cracking down. So it's a very, very opportunistic, very blatantly, unashamedly opportunistic approach. So when they need labor, they let it in. When the economy is bad and they don't need labor anymore, they squeeze them out, right? And so that's one of the, this is one of the sort of two major things, how Thai state manages its migrants. And this is just an illustration, right? So normally Thailand is not thought of, normally we think, oh, Thai people go abroad and work, right? And Thailand is not thought of as a recipient of migration, but actually it receives a lot of migration. So the last data I could get in the shape of this graph, right? 2014, they had almost 4 million people, migrants a year, right? It's a huge number of migrants, right? Arriving into Thailand, right? So Thailand is a huge recipient of migration. And and the second thing, how they manage that, right? So normally we think of Thailand as very laid back, tropical kind of holiday destination, but it's a very sort of rather well-oiled and rather well-run state, right? So, and also I've observed over the 30 years of my involvement with Thailand and, you know, Japanese people living there, right? That the controls, migration controls are getting more steadily, consistently more efficient, more and more efficient. It's getting better, sort of, Thailand is getting better at migration controls. So, for example, there's no highway to naturalization. So if you want to become a Thai citizen, you have to do the same thing. You have to abandon your name, abandon your passport, go full Monty. So Thai or nothing, right? Which is not always an option for a lot of people, right? And also there are no double barrel national identities that are so popular elsewhere. So you cannot be Burmese Thai or Japanese Thai. Little anecdote from my life. I used to work with an Algerian chap who was married to a Thai woman. And when he told me her name, I said, it's not a Thai name, it's a Burmese name. Turns out she was naturalized Burmese in Thailand and he didn't even know. So, and he was married to her like for 8 years, they had a daughter together, I had no idea she was Burmese, not Thai. So, so that kind of assimilation is still there, right? Like hardcore 100% assimilation, right? And when we talk about Sino-Thais, meaning Thai people of Chinese persuasion, it's not an official term. It's more sort of self-appellation. They call themselves that, right? And we have to sort of, when you have to talk about Chinese people of Chinese origin in Thailand, you call them that. But it's not an official name. There's not an official thing like that, right? So no double-barrel identities, no multiculturalism. Thai or nothing. Also, working on the tourist visa, it used to be very popular and allowed back sort of 30, 40 years ago. Now it's practically phased out. So there's no this semi-legal gray area. And work visas and residence permits have very high entry sort of requirements, right? To get residence permit, you have to contribute quite a bit. And if you want to get a work permit in Thailand, you have to earn quite a bit of money. You have to have a really high skilled job or just you won't get the trade. Unless you're an illegal migrant in low skilled job and they allow you to come in, but they will kick you out when they don't need you anymore. So it's very, very tough, very tight ship that they're on there. Okay. Right. Okay, so another thing is, even if you do manage to naturalize, there are lots of restrictions you can read yourself, right? So you're not allowed to vote for a while, you weren't allowed to take on any official jobs. Foreign citizens are not allowed to vote. So political rights are very, very, very restricted for anyone foreign in Thailand. So overall tendency, as I mentioned, is towards tighter, ever tighter and more efficient migration management. So outcomes. So what does it mean for both Thailand? So what do they get? That relationship. Remember I mentioned that relationship that between Thailand and Japanese migrants specifically, right? What's going on there, right? What do they get out of it? Why do they persist with it, right? What each party sacrifices, or what each party gets out of it, right? And it's a very nice way of thinking about things, about social phenomenon, right? Phenomena is that there are no solutions in real life. They don't exist, right? They're only payoffs and trade-offs. It's a balance of payoffs and trade-offs, right? So I will look at the outcomes for both parties, for the Thai state and for Japanese migrants from the point of view, what payoffs and what trade-offs both have and what do they get out of it. So For the Japanese in Thailand, right? For Thailand Japanese, the trade-offs, what they pay with, right? They don't get any political rights, so you don't get any say in what you in the country where you live. There's no easy naturalization, so you won't get the passport so easily. And because of that, most Japanese people there are, as what is known in Japan as non-pori. They're absolutely apolitical. They don't take any part in anything political in Thailand. Also because they're too scared to be deported, because in Thailand it's quite strict on that. If they catch you taking part in any political protests or anything that they deem sort of untoward, you will be deported, right? The justice or injustice is quite swift there. And also there's not much social security in Thailand, but you won't get access to it because you're a foreigner for them. And in order to get your residence permits, right, you need to pay through the nose, right? So you need large bank deposits, or you have to purchase property. There is a minimum, I can't quite remember, but there's a minimum level of the cost of the property that you bought that will qualify you for a residence permit. So you cannot just buy a shack and say, oh, I'm going to live here, right? So, and also pension transfers for retirees, you should also have a certain amount of money to be allowed to stay in Thailand. And like I said, high skill, high paid jobs are required for work visas. You won't be just given a visa just because, you can cook at a street stall or something. Right. Okay. And so the payoffs for migrants. Why do they still keep coming to Thailand? Why there are such huge numbers and ever growing? So, like, seriously, it's quite overwhelming. The sheer growth of the community is very rapid over the last 3 decades that I've been involved with them. Right. So it's a better lifestyle. Right, most people come for the better lifestyle. One thing that people I hear about apart from obvious benefits of getting more bang for your yen, right? For the same money you get more and better lifestyle, right? Is the sense of liberation, kaihokan, right? Because Japanese people feel liberated from social control back in our questions afterwards, okay, if you don't mind, right? Yes. So it was a recurring theme among my respondents. They were saying that we feel relieved to live here. Because on the one hand, you don't have the same social control as in Thailand because you're a foreigner. On the other hand, it's also another thing, I don't really have time to focus on that in this particular presentation, is they experience as an invisible minority. They're foreigners, but they can completely blend in and become anonymous in Thailand. And a lot of my respondents had lived elsewhere before, like lived in Canada, in Germany, in America, where they told me they would feel standing out as a sore thumb because you always feel a foreigner. You looked at as a foreigner, right? And when something happens to you, you think, oh, is it because I look different? And in Bangkok, they never have that. You can just completely blend in and be. So is this anonymity, the joy of anonymity of living in Thailand, right? That's what people feel relieved about. And so despite, like I said, high life standards for the same money, and despite people grumbling about many aspects of Japanese life, because obviously things are not run the same way as back in Japan, and there's lots of grumbling going on, constant this butsu, 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 right? People still stay, right? People don't leave, they build their lives, they marry, they purchase property, they send their children to international schools, which in Japan is a huge commitment. Some of you may be aware. So if you send your child to an international school, it means they will have no future in Japan because you are out of this sort of trajectory of Japanese education, right? You will be treated as kikoku shijo, right? Like a kind of like a not really Japanese, right? A returnee, so to say, right? And these tightening immigration controls, they don't really affect Japanese people so much because most Japanese residents are legal anyway, so they're clean in front of the law. And another thing is that why people go and stay in Thailand is that cultural affinity. A lot can be said on how the countries are very similar and how Japanese people, despite all this grumbling and differences that they don't like, there's a lot of similarities between Japanese and Thai cultures, right? That makes it sort of them say that they say there's no DISA, there's no time difference between Japan and Thailand. It's very easy to adjust culturally for Japanese people because lots of things are different, but kind of they make sense, right? And that thing also I can blend in with the crowd. So you can enjoy anonymity. You're not a visible minority. You can just be just a person in a big city, right? Okay, we're almost there. Okay, trade-offs for the Thai state, right? Well, they have this large affluent enclave of non-assimilating foreigners, over 100,000 people, who are not planning on becoming Thai in any shape or form, not even learn the language properly. Very few do. And also they have, and it's known, right? Japanese people have somewhat snooty attitudes about Thai people. They say, oh, kodomo mitai, kind of stuff. Because from the Japanese point of view, Thai people are too laid back, right? Which is very strange because they come to Thailand specifically for that laid back lifestyle and they complain about it, right? So there's a bit of sort of incongruity there. And like I said, this private grumbling sometimes turns into minor acts of defense, like Ms. Morimoto, blocking motorcycles with her body on the pavement. And actually, she did prompt the BMA, the Bangkok Metropolitan Authority, to start a slow burn crackdown on these motorcycles, whizzing across along pavements in Bangkok. So she did manage to sort of start some kind of change, right? But it's very difficult because they're mafia run and so on and so forth. They're very culturally ingrained, right? So, okay. And yeah, payoffs. Okay, so payoffs. What does the Thai state get out of this, right? What do they get out of it, right? Practically, for all purposes, right? Japanese migrants are a model minority because they're law-abiding. They are always officially registered. It's almost a rite of passage for them to go to the embassy and get registered, which is not required, by the way. The crime rate is non-existent practically. Then positive social economic contribution and work ethic and manners that also very similar to Thai. So like I said, it's very easy for Japanese people to integrate into some ways of Thai society, which are very hierarchy and manners focused. Also, Japanese migrants arrive as fully functional adults, right? They're like ready-made products with all the work ethic and skills and money, whatever, so you don't have to invest into their education. They arrive at their prime with either work skills or very handsome savings and pensions and property purchases. So it's a win-win situation for the Thai state. Also, economically active migrants, people who do choose to work or run a business in Thailand, they run or staff Bangkok's, first of all, Japanese convenience infrastructure, which is huge, right? All these Japanese geared shops and restaurants, all kind of imaginable service industries, right? They're also multiple use because they're not only for Japanese people, they're for everyone, because Thai people also make use of them, right? And so they provide job skills for Japanese enterprises in Thailand that way too, because Japan has a huge manufacturing presence in Thailand. It's probably, I think it's Japan's biggest manufacturing base in Asia outside China, or it has been, it was for most of time. And also they have this community which is non-political, apolitical. They're very quiet. They don't participate in anything political at all. So they don't cause any trouble, right? And then another thing is another recurring theme from my fieldwork, right? I did ask that question my respondents. I said, so where do you want to die? Where do you want to spend the last years of your life? And practically everyone, except maybe for one chap, right? They all said, Nihon de Hono I want to be buried in Japan. So they come fully functioning adults with lots of skills and money, and they go back to die in Japan. So Thai state gains a lot from this. So last thing. So in a nutshell, so what we get, right? So both parties benefit in this exchange of payoffs and trade-offs. So both parties gain. Of course, they trade off something, but they also gain something, right? So this situation is can be likened to that, how the American Revolution started, right? Taxation without representation. So they pay taxes, they contribute financially, and they gain some out of it, but they get no political representation, right? And also no automatic or guaranteed naturalization. So they trade economic rights for political rights or citizenship rights. And well, de facto modern minority, so to say, and no assimilationist integration required or attempted on both sides. So neither the Japanese migrants nor the Thai state bother with any kind of attempts to try to assimilate or whatever, just live and let live. So as long as you pay taxes and you don't protest, all hunky-dory, in plain English, right? So, and also it's like the overall global trend, right? So it's kind of like there's a consensus the people who suffered most from the globalization of the last few decades are the middle classes of the developed world, right? Because our life standards are getting squeezed, we're getting less because manufacturing bases were moved elsewhere, right? So and Japan is part of the developed world. So their middle classes are very much squeezed financially. So there's quite a big trend globally for the middle classes from the so-called first world, from the developed countries, to escape to the so-called developing world. And among my friends, a lot of people live everywhere, like they did that kind of thing, right? So so that is also part of the picture. Right. So, ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Excellent. I should have done this at the very beginning. Put a boundary here. I'll come on the inside, perhaps. So you can't escape. Thank you very much for a very fascinating talk.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's lots of questions. I'll just start us off. So you've talked quite a lot about the Thai state and the Japanese migrants, but I was wondering what the role of the Japanese state actually is, because these large infrastructure investments must have started as some kind of development aid kind of project.
Yes.
So how did that transition from sort of a state intervention towards something that is now considered to be essentially private citizens who move from one place to another?
Yes, I think there are two parallel things that don't really interfere with each other. One is investment, right, and the shift of the manufacturing base out of Japan to Thailand, and the other one is emigration from Japan is a private business, and actually Japan it's a very strange kind of thing, because on the one hand they're getting depopulated, on the other hand they can seem to get rid of their pensioners soon enough. If you know these programs of moving pensioners out of Japan, they started in the 1980s, right? So the Japanese state seems to be quite happy for migrants to leave, and also because it's a liberal country, right? So they don't make any they don't thwart Japanese people from leaving the country, and there's no Japanese state involvement in Japanese people moving out of Japan, apart from classic Japanese kind of sort of the state enterprise relationship, when they sort of backhandedly promote retirees leaving abroad. So they're different things. They're completely different. They're not really related.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that investment and the movement of people, they're like.
But when you talk to the migrant, did they themselves not say, "Oh, we feel safe here because we have a transport infrastructure that's partially built
Yes.
by the Japanese"? So there is some kind of push-pull type of relationship.
Yes, there was a joke, but it was at the level of a joke. They said that the Japanese built the railway links for themselves.
Right.
Because for them, I remember when I was leaving Japan for Thailand, they told me, "Can you imagine they don't have trains in Thailand?" I was like, oh, how can you live? Because in Japan, everything is train-based. Absolutely, it's like England used to be before Britain decided to destroy its rail network, right? Yeah. So it's but there's not a very strong connection. I think for Japan, it's first of all, it's the export of capital, because they have extra money, and Japan is very good with savings. Japanese people are very good at saving. They have to export capital somewhere, and then the export of technology. Japan is very anxious to export its technologies like Shinkansen high-speed trains or mass transit systems abroad. So they try to, and now they have to compete with the Chinese in that sense. The Chinese put up very strong, fierce competition.
Right.
So they win a lot of contracts these days. So Japanese, they kind of, so yeah.
Excellent.
So lots of things going on at the same fronts. There's a little bit of a crossover, but they're kind of, my perception, they were quite separate. I don't think that they build them specifically for Japanese residents. It's just an opportunity to export technology, export capital, make money.
Right.
JICA.
Because it's a very similar thing just happened now in Saigon, which is
Yes.
to see, maybe that would be an interesting comparative case. Right, I'll open up to the floor. There were quite some questions already at the beginning. Shall we start with you and then come then?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about citizenship for second generation Japanese, so children that are born in Thailand, and when I wanted to ask whether they get Thai citizenship or
You don't get it automatically. Yes. Yes, you don't have this, what do you call it, just solis, right? The thing in Thailand, no, you won't just get it. You have to apply for it. You, like I said, because of this unequal treaties, you can keep your Japanese passport and you have extended residence rights in Japan. So you can have your residence permit extended almost interminably, but you will never become a citizen unless you give up on all your Japanese stuff and you become Thai. So it's either, and actually both, interestingly enough, both Japan and Thailand have this all or nothing attitudes to citizenship. So you go either full Japanese or full Thai. You cannot. I know also personally, I know people who manage to keep both, right? But they have to keep very low profile, because if either party discovers that, you will lose that passport automatically. So they're extremely strict about it, right? So second generation, yeah. Also, I know I personally know people who were actually Japanese people who were born to Japanese parents in Thailand. They live on residence permits because their parents decided to keep Japanese passports for their children, so they don't want them to abandon them. So it's very interesting situation. So ambiguity and impermanence and stuff like that, right?
I have to leave to give you the feedback. It's very curious situation. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, welcome, my pleasure. Thank you.
Right, yes, that's on and then.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for an interesting talk. Just wanted to know something about the unequal treaties, because was it like an official unequal treaties?
Yes.
The unequal treaties in the sense that an imperial power imposes upon less privileged or less developed countries.
Yes.
But I thought that was you said 1878.
Yes.
Did they not have a sort of agreement in 1887? It was more kind of equal base, sort of very formal.
Yes.
Was it informal unequal treaties, or was it official unequal treaties?
They were official unequal treaties, and it took some time for Japan to conclude them, because the original unequal treaties were imposed on Thailand and Japan by Western powers.
Yeah. So,
And Japan fought very hard. They fought their way up, as you probably know, right?
Yeah.
To be accepted at that level. So it took them some time to impose the same unequal treaties on Thailand too.
so Japan
Yes.
imposed it on Thailand.
Yes.
Yeah.
They did. They did. Finally managed after a while, because they were not treated by either sort of Western powers or Thailand, Siam at the time, right? At the same way as Westerners, right? But Japan insisted we're the same level, but they just couldn't. Yeah.
But then when did they manage, when did the Thailand manage to shake it off?
These treaties are still effective. They're big, yes, they renewed them, they update them slightly. They're not the same as they used to be before, but they are, I can't remember, it is called the Thai-Japanese amity, there's a long, very old-fashioned name to them, and they still are running, they're still effective, but they're updated. They update them, I think, every 10 years or 20 years or something like that.
And it is still unequal.
Yes, they're still there. From all the way from 1878, yes.
They don't wanna be with.
Once again, it's a very asymmetrical position, power, right? Because they cannot, their bargaining position is getting stronger, by the way. So, for example, I think it was 2015 when Thai people were for the first time allowed to go to Japan visa-free for 2 weeks. It was a huge breakthrough because finally, Japan admitted that Thailand are kind of like, they are sort of equals in a way, right? It's a very raw, rough power relationship, despite all the niceties, despite all this amicable relationship. And you know, royal families, they're good buddies, and so on and so forth. Thai and Japan. Yes, of course, yes.
I know that Thailand was part of the Great East Asian Co-Prosperity.
Yes.
And was the only country that wasn't the object of Western imperialism. It wasn't colonized by.
Yes,
the
it wasn't.
West.
Yes.
Thailand was quite sort of friendly with Japanese, sort of like sided with Japan.
Yes.
So, yeah, just thought that it was quite.
Yes, they were not.
that
Yes, yeah.
Maintaining that level of friendliness with Japan.
Yes. Once again, because I was also I asked myself the same question. Was like, what was going on there? Why? Because Japan managed to build themselves up quicker than Thailand. Like that, what do you call it? Kyohei Fukoku thing? Fukoku Kyohei, like the other way around. Fukoku Kyohei. It means like prosperous country, strong military, right? Japan managed to do that in like 20 years, and it took much more time to Thailand. And because of that, because Japan's sheer military and economical strength, they were able to have a stronger bargaining position and impose these treaties on Thailand. And also another thing, part of those unequal treaties was, for example, one thing, right? What we say unequal treaties. Unequal treaties, one of the biggest clauses of it was that citizens of countries like America or Japan who imposed those treaties on Thailand would be safe from being tortured, from torture, if they detained. Because at the time in Thailand, torture was compulsory. If you're detained, if you're suspected of any crime, it was called, what's it called, nakon something, I can't remember. I forgot the name, but there was a name for that law, right? And actually, Japan had the same thing, but Westerners made them abolish that, right? First of all, they made Japan make their citizens exempt from torture and from being subject to their judicial sort of jurisdiction, right? And Japan abolished it very quickly. And then they tried to do the same thing with Thailand, because what happened in Thailand, foreign citizens in Thailand would be exempt from literal torture, right? It was kind of connected. If you're suspected of anything, detained, torture, because the thinking behind was very pre-modern, right? So you will speak more truth in duress. So if you're hurt, you will speak more truth, right? And Japan was also very anxious for their citizens, right, not to be tortured if detained in Thailand. Kind of stuff. So. It's very raw kind of stuff, very real stuff. It's not only about economic power, it's also about this jurisdiction being, it's called extraterritoriality, right? The thing. So it means like you're not subject to local courts because you don't consider them good enough, right? In a way, I understand them because, you know, torture is not fun.
Well, on that point, yes.
Yes.
Alan, Rachel, and then.
Yes.
I guess I've got like a two-part question.
Yes.
I feel like thinking about everything you've said, it feels like the policy is actually very similar at both ends of the migration spectrum,
Yes.
where it feels like, okay, what can we do to maximize economic benefit from migrants? Whether
Yes.
that's low-skilled migrant workers who come in from Burma, Laos, wherever, when we need them.
Yes.
We avoid naturalizing them, we avoid giving them
Yes.
that many rights, we can then get rid of them when we don't need them.
Yes.
At the other end, it's whatever, global nomad visas, retiree visas, silver visas, those sorts of things. Bring these people in, again, don't naturalize them,
Yes.
don't give them that many rights, but give them sufficient space to spend their money
Yes.
in the Thai economy. So I suppose like the two parts of the question are, you mentioned property quite a lot. I have an understanding that foreigners could not own land in Thailand. They can own leases.
Yes, you still can't. No, you can buy a condominium or something, but you want yes. In Thailand, they're extremely sensitive about land ownership because obviously they've observed how it happens in other countries where you were colonized or whatever. So
yeah. So like that seems like really particular. So I was a bit curious about when that began. I suppose the second part of my question was, obviously we're seeing in all sorts of places the way certain political actors are able to use migration discourse
yes.
in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose my question is, has the Thai state in that way that it kind of excludes, prevents naturalization, maximizes the economic benefits, has that been successful enough to prevent anybody in Thailand ever turning migration discourse into something beneficial politically?
Yeah, very good question, because well, I didn't sort of talk about it at length because obviously for the time constraints, right? I asked myself that question when I was doing my research too, right? So the first one, when did it all start? It's hard to trace that back, but I do think that very strong, staunch neoliberal stance of Thai governments, right? Since like well, last 70 years, like everything for profit, right? Because their concern was that Thailand was not economically growing. They tried to maximize it from every possible way, and they've succeeded because Thailand is like, well, it's a successful economy. I mean, like as all of the economies, they do fail sometimes, but overall, it's rather successful, right? And the other thing is also, I think, relative to many other places, Thailand does have much less anti-migration rhetoric. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel. Yes. Also, yes. If you're like from Pama and stuff like that, right? They also in Thailand, they're quite conscious of who are their big brothers and little brothers. So Thailand has this very snooty attitude about their neighbors because they're the most, like, maybe say for Malaysia and Singapore, Thailand is the most developed and most prosperous state. So they look down on Burma, Cambodia. They always treat them kind of these little brothers like Nong or something like that, right? And yes, and Thailand, there's ambiguous. What do you call it? The ambiguous allure of the West, right? So for Thailand, they do have this, I wouldn't say love-hate relationship, but this kind of like very mixed feelings, admiration with the first world. So they do try to curry favors and at the same time squeeze some benefits out of their relationship with their richer counterparts, which is like the West and Japan, so on and so forth, right? So so there is, I would say, and there is this kind of little brewing kind of sentiment maybe of it's not actually violent or anything, there's no protest, but there's kind of derision probably towards migrants from poorer neighbors, right? Which is not really the same for people coming from richer countries, including like Singapore, for example. They, yes, it's very sort of varied, right? Varied. How they feel about migrants, very varied. So they're happy about Japanese people, and generally, because I have like very extensive connections, friends, or whatever in Thailand, they do like Japanese people being there, although they are aware that they kind of a little bit snooty, haughty, also.
I have a very brief follow which is that extraterritoriality and all that stuff about, you know, you mentioned Japanese people setting up companies and their possession of that company,
Yeah.
allowing them residence. I wonder about property ownership in relation to companies. Presumably, companies are able to own land.
I think the company has to be 51% Thai-owned.
Yes, and also they have to have share. Even a small company, the Thai shareholders must outnumber foreign shareholders. Yes, so it's quite strict, right? They're very conscious of that. Yeah, because land is the real thing, right? Yes. Yes, thank you, Rachel. Thanks. Yes.
Thank you. Rachel, move to you.
Yes.
About the question of intermarriage, actually, because one of the reasons why the Chinese are so assimilated, because they married
Yes.
Thai communities, and it seems like the Japanese have not done that, or am I wrong?
Oh, they do actually. They do. It's quite popular once again, because in many ways, once again, I know personally this Thai Japanese marriage both ways, Thai man, Japanese woman, Japanese man, Thai woman. It's quite sort of, because lots of times it's Japanese women marrying foreigners, but in Thailand, lots of Japanese men, the other way around, Japanese men marrying Thai women. Yeah, the two things. First of all, a cultural affinity, because it's relatively easy for them to get on, except for the amount of chilies and food and stuff like that, right? And another thing, I forgot what it was. Sorry. Oh yeah, the thing, the naturalization, right? Because you have to. I knew a woman who became naturalized, but she kept her Japanese passport, and she was like, "Don't tell anyone." Kind of stuff. So for them, it's also the decision. I noticed like the decision for them what their children will be, Japanese or Thai, because a lot of them, actually all of them that I knew, they all send their children to international schools. So their children are kind of globalist Bangkokians. They're of mixed heritage, native English speakers from their international schooling and stuff. So it's very, very interesting, because another theme that I was exploring, Bangkok is a global city, because Bangkok is more similar to other global cities than to the rest of Thailand. Same thing. So what happens there is quite exceptional, right? So the second generation, like even Japanese people, like born to this kind of marriages, like children's first generation born in Thailand, a lot of time they're native English speakers from their schooling, which is quite crazy in a way. Not crazy, but you wouldn't think that would happen, but it does, and quite a lot. I don't have statistics. I don't think there's statistics for that, right? It's more my exposure over 30 years now of seeing a lot of people like that, right? Very interesting configurations, I think. So Thai mom, Japanese dad, born in Bangkok, native English speaker. And they're very, very international. They go like, I know, like, once again, my friend, they send their children to study abroad, because most of them come from like rather affluent backgrounds, right? At least those that I know, right? So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you, Artour. I really particularly love that little anecdote you gave about about the Japanese resident cooking Thai food once a month without chilies, which just says so much. I just wondered, where does Japanese food figure in the time of the Bangkok canon? Does it hold high status like it does here, for example? I mean, Japanese food is always ranked quite highly in status. How does it rank in Thailand?
I think in Thailand, it exists at all market segments. So you can go to a cheap supermarket and you can get your sushi for #2, right? Or you can go to a fancy Japanese restaurant. And Thai people are very, very, very picky about food, right? To satisfy the Thai palate. It's but they overall they do like Japanese food. Japanese was very popular in Thailand despite, and also another thing for Thai people thing is if it's not enough chilies, it doesn't taste like anything. And obviously Japanese food doesn't have much spiciness to it. But Thai people do love their Japanese food. And like I said, all these Japanese restaurants, even run by Japanese people, originally geared towards expats, toward this kind of, very special their market segment. They are very, very popular with Thai people. So for Thai people, Japanese food is like part of the, like a normal landscape, and it's everywhere. And back to your question, yes, you can go, just like in Japan, you can go as high price-wise or as low as you can afford. Right, you can go to Big C, right, and get your sushi, right? Big C is the kind of like Tesco's maybe, or maybe even cheap, well, like Lidl or something, that level of supermarket, right? You can, and there'll be quite a range of Japanese foodstuffs. Another thing from my respondents, right? There's nothing Japanese foodstuff, no matter how weird or exotic, offbeat, that you cannot buy in Bangkok. Absolutely everything, right? So.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question here
Yes.
online from Nafsika Papacharalampus.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you, Artur, for a fascinating talk. You talked about Japanese migrants feeling the freedom of anonymity and about their lack of desire to integrate. Does this mean that they view their existence in Thailand as liminal? How do they experience belonging? For instance, does Thailandness feature at all in their identity? Do they express nostalgia for the homeland or a desire to return to Japan?
It's a very, very good question. And I think it's a very good question because Nafsika knows me enough, right? Right. I wrote 100,000 words about that. That's exactly the question that I asked in my PhD, right? Naturally, Japanese people don't say, oh, I'm liminal here. Or if you ask them, are you liminal? Will be like, what? But it's very interesting. Yeah, how do they, with this kind of, when they exist, like probably you know a bit about where the situation for them, right? So there's very, very exacting citizenship regime on one side, very exacting citizenship on the other side, all kind of allowing to integrate, not allowing to integrate. They, yes, like I said, first generation people who just moved there, they range from kind of cooking Thai maybe 3 times a month and so on and so forth, like being more into Thai things, right? To people who go hyper Japanese, so they go like, they sort of develop this extreme identities. I knew people who just refuse to eat Thai food. They say, it's this and that, whatever, right? So there's quite a range of responses. And I think most people are somewhere in between, but that in between is they stay very much Japanese. Like I said, except for one chap that I met, all people say, will go to die in Japan. I'll be buried in Japan, not here. At the same time, they build their entire lives in Japan, in Thailand. So it's very like sort of very, I don't think they're aware of themselves as liminal, but they're neither here nor there. They're transnational, truly, in the sense of the word. At the same time, they do acquire, because after a certain time in Thailand, some local ways rub off on you. Why? Because they make sense in the place. Why people do that certain thing, certain way in certain place, right? Because they work better there, right? So they do acquire some habits, some not really customs, but I wouldn't say that they stray too much away from their Japaneseness. So overall, they stay very not assimilating. With a few exceptions, I met people who kind of go like full on Thai, but they're very different kind of. They're a minority, right? People who become kind of the married Thai people and become more Thai. Japanese, actually, both Thai and Japanese people have very strong sense of national identity because both nation-state projects are quite successful. They're very strong, quite successful, right? And this kind of the tension between them, right? Which way to go, right? Is, I don't think it's resolvable, right? So it's very, yeah.
Thank you, Nafsika. Excellent question. Right, we have time for one more. Yes, please. Professor has it.
It's quite interesting thinking, but I think that it's a quite an easy question maybe, because normally, according to the immigration, theory, I think when Japan invests much in Thailand, people in Thailand come to Japan to work because there's a link between Japan and Thailand.
Yes.
But it's a kind of opposite way because of the Japanese investment in Thailand. They also pull the people from Japan to Thailand. Do you think?
You mean so the people move both ways? Yes.
In theory, I think people from global south to go to global north, it's a kind of immigration theory. But I think that it's your case is totally different. Opposite from Japan, global north to global south. So I think is there any connection between the Japanese investment? To promote Japanese people to Thailand?
Yes, of course, because like I said, there's it's very easy to live your life as a Japanese person in Bangkok, definitely in Thailand, because of that investment, because of like flights, retail, everything. Yes, yes, yeah. Of course there is a connection. There is a connection, but also it goes back quite a while because. This what they call the Pan-Asian co-prosperity. Japan kind of considers Thailand and the whole South Asia as it's kind of in a way like a backyard, right? That kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
At the same time, there is this migration goes both ways. So a lot of Thai people go to Japan for various purposes, like as students or they call it apprenticeship. It's a kind of like a work visa by it's a what do you call it, labor migration by stealth, right? And in my time, I remember when I studied in Japan, we had a lot of Thai students, and they were very interesting, right? They wouldn't talk to anyone at all. Very strange, because we had like people from all over the world. I lived like in a international student hostel in Osaka, and we all would hang out together. 98% of Thai people wouldn't even talk to you. I wouldn't know how to handle it. It's very strange. They would stay together. They would move like together as one unit. Well, about 50 of them actually, right? So I don't know. Maybe it was particular to that place, or maybe it's sort of I didn't get the chance to observe that outside of that setting, but that was yeah, and also sorry, I kind of I started waxing lyrically about my student years. Yeah, but yes, of course, Japanese people moved to Thailand because it's easy to, for example, if you want to go there. Oh, the reason why I moved there because it was very easy for me to find a Japanese language job, like this, right? So very. Because Japanese language skills are not like, for example, if you try to find a job in Britain where Japanese language is required, the market is very small. In Thailand, it's huge. It's huge, right? It's very easy, right? So like lots of things because of that Japanese huge involvement over the entire, definitely post-war period. It's very easy to be Japanese in Thailand. And also those unequal treaties too, right? It's one of the countries where you can go stay for half a year just doing nothing, right? Or you can set up a fake company, you will sort of just pay a few like some taxes, right? Never post profit, nothing, and you can live for as long as you want to. So
Don't give them ideas.
yes.
So thank you very much.
You can do the same with American passport too, by the way. So
Right.
if any Americans amongst you, so.
Thank you very much. So please give a round of applause for our speaker. Very interesting talk. Please do come back on the 5th of February for our next talk, which will be given by Professor Mika Hasepe, who I'll ask the last question. And the title of her presentation is Multicultural Coexistence Unfriendly to Refugees in Japan? A comparison between Vietnamese refugees in Japan and Vietnamese boat people in the UK. That's on the 5th of February We also have a series of Japan-related events starting next week. We have on Monday, the 27th, a No workshop with Sakurako Tanaka. I've just sent an email, a reminder around about that. And also in the Wolfson Gallery, there is a small exhibition on Persian and Japanese calligraphy, a very interesting attempt to bring these two things into conversation. That opens on Thursday evening. Yes.
There's also a Japan-related talk tomorrow at the SOAS Taiwan Center, which is about Koxinga.
That's right. Yes, how is Koxinga remembered in Japan, right, in Kyushu? Yes, and in Taiwan. Yes. So lots of events happening. So do join us again, and thank you very much for coming tonight.